It's the third week of July 2025. I'm Dave. I'm here with Andrew, and you're listening to BV Weekly. This week, we'll be talking about MJ Lenderman Wednesday and the indie country boom, the new Alex G album, the Tyler, the Creator, and Acid Bath shows we just saw, new Deftones, and more. What's up, Andrew?
Hey, what's going on, Dave? How are you?
Pretty good. What'd you do this week?
The big thing I did is I saw Tyler, the Creator, at Madison Square Garden on Monday, which was the first of 6 arena shows in the New York area, 2 at Madison Square Garden, 2 at Barclays Center, and then he's got 2 more at Prudential Center in Newark. So yeah, huge run for Tyler. It was awesome. I saw him on the Call Me If You Get Lost tour, his previous album, and I wrote this in my review on the site, but like in this current age of sort of people presenting album cycles as quote eras, I think Tyler is really good at that, at like making, it's not just like, oh, I have a new album. It's like, I have a full new era with all new visuals and color schemes, and it's reflected in the videos and the album artwork and the tour props. And it's just, I think it's actually really cool because it makes for, like, if sometimes an artist comes out with a new album and you're like, oh, I saw him on the last tour, you know, it's like, that was only 2 years ago. Like, maybe I don't need to go. And it's like with Tyler, you know, you're going to get an entirely different experience than you did last time, because you know that the whole show is going to be like this extended aspect of this just like album cycle or era that he's in. And like it very much was. And the first 9 songs of the show were the new album performed in order minus 1 song, and minus, like, the first 10 songs minus 1 of them were the first 9. And then, you know, and I always think this, and sometimes I feel like I'm, what's the word, a broken record. Sorry. I sometimes I feel like I'm a broken record when I make this point, but I'm like, you know, Tyler is over 15 years into his career. Like, I vividly remember the rise of Odd Future 15 years ago, and I don't think it's a given that he would be doing 6 arena shows in New York, primarily because his newest record is such a hit. You know what I mean? Like, think, especially in hip hop, like just last night, Wu-Tang played Madison Square Garden, and I think the only reason they played an arena is because their album from 31 years ago is still loved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's funny, it's actually, this timing is especially funny because I mentioned in my review too, like, when Odd Future came out, they were like, oh, this is the new Wu-Tang, a comparison that in hindsight is massively an understatement. You know, like, no member of Wu-Tang has gone to the heights of Tyler as a solo artist.
Right, right.
So yeah, it was a really cool experience. And then you got the whole Chromacopia, that's the name of the new record, the whole Chromacopia experience. And then he goes to this B stage in the back of the arena, and he like goes through his other eras, and the way he does it is he has like, it's set up like an old like 70s inspired like music nerds room basically, and he has a stack of vinyl records and he flips through them, the camera's zoomed in, so you're seeing his record collection. People are cheering when a Solange record shows on the screen. He had an old Black Eyed Peas record that showed up a couple times, and then he just gets to one of his albums. He picks it up, people scream, walks over to a turntable, puts it on, and then he plays like 3 or 4 songs from that album. He also used that opportunity to do this big tribute to Clips, because he's on their new record that we talked about on this show last week. He took out Lord Willin', their debut album, and he gave this whole speech about how, like, if he wasn't listening to that album in his bedroom as an 11-year-old, he wouldn't be rapping like the stuff he's now rapping today on stage for you right now. And Pusha T was in the audience, actually, as he was doing this, as I saw on Complex's Instagram. I did not personally notice Pusha T in the venue. And after, before doing that, actually, he did his verse from Clips' new album that he's on, the song POV, over the beat to his own song Rusty. So that was, I believe, the live debut of that verse, because he hasn't performed it on tour yet. Clips hasn't played that song with him or anything. So yeah, it was a
lost opportunity if he was there.
I know. I mean, it's so funny how often, like, it's like, I don't know exactly what the, you know, how people feel about guest appearances like that, but I'm like, it's like when I was at Coachella and Shabuzi and Big X the Plug played the same day and they have that hit song together. And I was like, for sure, one of them will do it with the other on stage. And they both played it alone. like,
Oh,
and I'm just like, I don't get it, but yeah, I don't know. It might just be, and honestly, my guess is it just comes down to like, no one's making a guest appearance that they're not getting paid for.
maybe. Yeah. Or just logistics. Who knows? But
Right.
yeah.
It could also be like this tour is so like, so it's not like it's such a meticulous
Choreographed.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, I don't want to use the word choreographed because it's not that so much, but I think it's like it has such a set run of show that maybe if you were like, oh, bring another mic on stage or another person out, like it might just mess with like what they've set up to do in each city night after night. But there have been some some minor changes. He hasn't done that clips thing in any other at any prior show. So
Right. I was not there, but I do hope. I guess there's still a chance with 4 or 5 more Tyler shows that I make at least one of them. I also did not make the Wu-Tang show last night, but that one did actually have a lot of guests. Havoc, A Mobb Deep came out, The Lox, Redman, Big Daddy Kane, Slick Rick, SMV, Little Kim, Little C's from Junior Mafia. Wu-Tang are on their, quote, final tour right now. I think from afar, it doesn't look that different from the tour I saw a few years ago when they played Barclays Center with Nas. But it's getting a lot of attention because of this whole final show. So the show last night at Madison Square Garden did feel like a big deal, and all those classic guests coming out made it feel even more so. So yeah, I was kind of bummed to miss that one. But
yeah, it looked awesome. And Run the Jewels opened, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
The amazing bill. That's who they're on tour with. And I think some people think last night was literally their last show ever, but the tour's not even done. They're playing Prudential Center in Newark soon. So yeah, there's more chances to see them.
Yeah.
And a show I did see though is I made it to Acid Bath, which was also kind of a big event. One of the biggest metal stories of the past year has been the return of Acid Bath. They have 2 albums from the 90s that some consider the greatest sludge metal, or at least one of them people consider the greatest sludge metal album of all time. And then they've been gone for a very long time. No one could believe it when they started announcing reunion shows last year. And a lot of people also couldn't believe, especially a lot of old heads could not believe that Acid Bath was selling out venues of like 3,000 people. And here in New York, they headlined Brooklyn Paramount, which holds, something like 2,500 to 3,000. The show sold out instantly when it was announced. They added a second one. Actually, if you're listening to this before like July 24th or something, and they have shows in other cities coming out. And I think a big reason is the legend of these albums has grown over time. You couldn't help but notice how young the crowd was. Of course, a lot of people who were listening to Acid Bath in the early 90s were there too, but clearly a lot of this crowd came to these albums later. So this is a band whose legend has grown over time, and young people singing every word. A lot of the shows feels kind of slow, but there were still people crowd surfing even during the slow songs, just nonstop the whole show. It was that kind of thing. I mean, people were leading acid bath chants. People were like holding up their phones to record themselves while crowd surfing, which is always kind of obnoxious. But like,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what that says about who has become Acid Bath fans over time. It wasn't 40-year-olds holding up their phone while crowd surfing. It was like 20-year-olds. And but yeah, it was fun. They were great, and I do recommend going to see them. And every show has amazing openers that are also bands that were their peers or they've influenced. Like the Syracuse show coming up has High on Fire opening it. The one I saw had I Hate God, who on stage said, "We go way back with Acid Bath," which obviously is true. New Orleans sludge scene, together 2 of the most notable bands out of that. And the merch lines were insane. I never saw Acid Bath's merch line was, I can't even describe it. Just, they had barricades so that it wrapped around in front of the table, and even if it just stopped there, I was probably minimum half hour. But then it kept going like along the venue and then into another room. And then this venue is huge. It has this giant, majestic lobby area. Then the merch line went into there. They had like security guards all along the way so that people could be told when they could walk over to the next part of the line so they didn't block walkways. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I didn't realize they were going to be selling like 6,000 tickets in New York. I know that they're so influential, but I would not have been surprised if it was like one night at Monarch. So
Right.
yeah.
And that's also like a common old guy narrative where they're like, I didn't see this coming. I saw him, at Coney Island High in the 90s. There were 30 people there. I liked that album, but I didn't know that this was going to happen. So yeah, like a lot of people who remember Acid Bath had nothing against Acid Bath, think they're cool, like the music. It didn't become clear until tickets went on sale for these reunions.
Yeah.
What a big deal this was going to be.
I mean, I also wonder, like, I mean, I wasn't there. So, like, to me, I mean, they're one of the 90s sludge metal bands, which basically means to me, I'm like, by default, like, they're, kind of pioneers because it was a pretty new style of music at the time. But sometimes, bands become, like, you don't realize that it's so groundbreaking or going to be seen as so influential. I mean, like, I don't know. A few days ago was also the Cap and Jazz reunion. And I feel like if you saw Cap and Jazz in the 90s, like, there's a good chance that you were just like, oh, this is just like a cool band in like the punk post-hardcore scene. And then fast forward 10, 15 years and they're like the most copied emo band ever.
Right.
It's like, and you don't always know. Yeah.
I mean, I even was going there in my head with related band American Football. Mm-hmm. Same thing where this legend grew over time. And
yeah, I mean, American Football's last show had 100 people at it. And that was like the most they've ever played to, like there was zero. That's the most extreme example. Them and like Duster, I think, are the most extreme examples of like, how the hell did this happen? At least Cap and Jazz were headlining the Metro in Chicago and stuff.
Yeah, no, it's very similar stories between all those bands. And to be clear, you meant their final show when they broke up the first time.
Yes, their last show before. Yeah, I mean, they only played like, I think 12 or 13 shows. The album came out after they broke up.
Right.
They were barely, American Football was barely around. Cap and Jazz were around, they were, and Acid Bath were obviously, they have 2 records, they toured.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just, it is interesting. I mean, and I when you're talking about younger people too, like I can't help but wonder, like, if it's at all like a rate your music thing.
My mind goes there for sure.
Speaking on a much, much, much bigger level of 90s metal bands who I don't think anybody saw coming, how much bigger and more interesting they'd be to young people. Deftones announced their new album, Private Music, actually just hours after we recorded last week's episode. So we knew it was coming. It had been teased and we wished we could have talked about it last week, but timing didn't work out. The first single, My Mind is a Mountain, is out now, and I've been listening to it all week. So that's also something I've done this week. It's really, really good. And I saw Deftones' recent tour, which was at Madison Square Garden also, and it was with the Mars Volta and Fleshwater. And my takeaway from that show was just like, because like Deftones have basically, if you're like, what is he talking about with like their influence now? Like basically like, there are so many bands in so many different styles of music in 2025, like young bands who look up to the Deftones, everything from metalcore to shoegaze to other forms of metal. And they used to be grouped with like new metal and stuff. For a minute there, they were the new metal band you're allowed to like them and System of a Down. And now it's like they're so far from that, and they're just consistently like considered like an important band by all these young people who also probably have no context for the era when they were grouped with bands that you might not want to say you like. And seeing them live, even playing songs from the 90s, it just felt so modern. Like even when they played like, stuff from Around the Fur, it just felt like seeing a modern band. They really understand how to sort of like tap into what elements of their music are timeless and sort of like kind of have any of the more dated elements fade away. And then when it comes to their new music, that's also true. I mean, this song it sounds like Deftones, but it also could sound like any of these new bands that are influenced by Deftones. Like it sounds like what people are listening to in 2025. And Deftones are still better at it than most of the bands, maybe all the bands that are trying to sound like Deftones right now. So that's pretty amazing, because I think, to be fair, that doesn't always happen. Like, you'll see, I'd rather not name names, but you'll definitely see veteran bands that they kind of are like, oh, that band's so influential now all of a sudden. And then, oh, that's cool, they have a new album coming. And then you listen to it and you're like, yeah, I'll stick with the old ones. So I think it's really cool that Deftones' new stuff holds up with like what people think of them now and how important they are now.
I got to say, the new Biohazard song also holds up. I know some people will laugh at that transition.
I will laugh at that transition.
If you like old Biohazard, the new Biohazard is also good. And that new song was just fresh in my head. Listened to it right before recording. Biohazard just announced their first album in like forever. And I was very relieved to hear that the new songs are good.
Yeah, they're a lot better than I expected, and they are genuinely good. And I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about, on one of the earlier episodes, talking about like the new Drain stuff, and they also have second single from their record out this week. And it's like, yeah, kind of similar to like what I said about Deftones, but like if you're into Drain, the new Biohazard is right up that same kind of alley. So
there you go.
What do you say we move on to the indie country thing?
Yes, pivoting to something completely different. Your indie country list. So you put together a list of 10 bands on BrooklynVegan.com this week that are kind of defining the indie country movement. And I think the big question is, what do you mean by indie country? Like, how is this not just a continuation of alt country that has existed for over 30 years?
Yeah. So I've been calling it indie country. I've seen it referred to different things. Rap Boys, who are on the list, they've called it post country, which I also think is cool. I've heard people call it country gaze because there's kind of a shoegazy element to some of this stuff. I've seen it called indie Americana. So like, I like indie country, and I like that it's ever so slightly different from alt country, just sort of like indie rock is ever so slightly different from alternative rock, right? Like, I mean, in the 90s, it's like Pavement is indie rock, Soundgarden is alternative rock, and it's like they were both playing rock music of an alternative form at the same exact time, but slightly different names. So to me, it kind of comes down to like, I kind of see indie country. The reason I like indie country is because this feels like country influenced music that is very distinctly indie rock. Like, I think all of these artists on this list are influenced by alt country, like definitely influenced by stuff like Drive By Truckers and Lucinda Williams and Jillian Welch and the Jayhawks and Uncle Tupelo and like Wilco, who's kind of on that fence between like sometimes they're alt country, sometimes they're just really not. Like even country at all. But I think it's influenced by that stuff, but it's also like a lot of this stuff is very distinctly influenced by Sonic Youth and Dinosaur Jr. and like I said, shoegaze and Pavement also. Like there's a lot of this stuff will be like kind of slacker rock sounding. So to me, it's kind of this like, it's not miles and miles away. Like, like it, I could see, I'm sure somebody might be like, this is annoying that you're differentiating. Like, come on, just let's call it alt country and move on. But I kind of see it as these new bands with this new perspective who are taking alt country and taking classic indie rock and doing it in a way that just kind of feels like something a little bit different. And actually, what it reminds me the most of are artists like Songs Ohia and Bonnie Prince Billy and Lamb Chop and Caliphone, and these artists that were like kind of all more tied to like the slowcore movement, like in the 90s and early 2000s. But then like some of them, like I would say like definitely like Songs Ohia and Bonnie Prince Billy feel like really, really like they both kind of like started as slowcore and then kind of got increasingly country. But like, and I've definitely, like Songs Ohia's Magnolia Electric Company record, which is probably the most influential album on this entire list, has definitely been called alt country, but it's like, it just feels so much more distinctly from the kind of more like lo-fi indie, like not so accessible, like compared to something like, like an Uncle Tupelo or Lucinda Williams, which, you know, like that felt a little bit more tied to like alternative music with some radio play. And, you know, this felt pretty like, you know, yeah, I think you get where I'm going with this. So I think that stuff is like kind of the most direct comparison, but like it didn't really have its own name, and it was a little bit more, you know, those things kind of happened at like they weren't as connected. This feels like what we're talking about on this article that I wrote. Like it's not just like a style of music that's kind of popping off. It's also like very much a scene. A lot of the artists on this list work with each other or tour with each other, are influenced by each other, came up, maybe some of them are literally from the same region, and it's just like it's like a local scene getting a spotlight, you know, just like, you know, Seattle grunge and Long Island emo and that kind of stuff. So I think it's like really a scene now that is kind of putting all this stuff together, like pulling from, you know, all that like Drive By Trucker stuff, Sonic Youth, Dinosaur Jr., My Bloody Valentine, Pavement, pulling from Songs of Ohio, pulling from Neil Young, and just kind of forming this scene together. So
right. And you're going to run through that list in a minute. So spoiler alert, you're talking about, you know, maybe most notably MJ Lenderman, Waxahachie, two artists that appear on your list, just for people in suspense so far. But you're also differentiating that kind of indie country thing from indie approved country, right? So we have Sturgill Simpson, Chris Stapleton, Tyler Childers, Margot Price, Casey Musgraves, and now maybe even throw Zach Bryan into that category. These are artists who are actual country, who in some cases are also influenced by alt country or have ties to alt country, but who are very much still country, unlike this thing that you're calling indie country.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that it's not country, but yeah, exactly. Like that, it is also different from that. And then that's almost like the inverse sometimes. Like Zach Bryan is influenced by Bon Iver and Joyce Manor, and like he has actively tried to make music that's a little bit more indie rock sounding, but it's like he's coming from the opposite angle. So it's like I feel like, you know, the doors were kind of opened a bit. Like, you know, we started to see over the past decade or so, like these more mainstream country artists that got this sort of indie approval, and now it's like you have this whole crop of, and also there's other, I mean, again, we're going to dive in, but it's also just like we've like established indie artists have been going country. Like Angel Olsen made a country album, Julian Baker and Torres made a country album together, Waxahachie, who you mentioned, like was around for a long time before she started embracing country. Big Thief have country songs on some of their records. So it's definitely something that's like kind of been seeping in to the indie world. And now I feel like there's this crop of bands, artists that are just doing both at once. And they all have like a DIY ethos, and they come from like a kind of just classic American DIY network type vibe. And I think this is like, to me, this is the most exciting thing happening in DIY indie rock right now.
So with that, why don't you run down the list?
It's in no particular order, but the first two are MJ Lenderman and Wednesday, which are like, I'd say a lot of this stuff kind of revolves around these two, both because they're from the Asheville, North Carolina scene. A lot of this stuff happens in Asheville, or some of these artists like go to Asheville to record at Drop of Sun Studios, which is where MJ Lenderman and Wednesday make their records. And they're just two of the fastest rising artists in the scene. And then on top of that, MJ Lenderman is just like one of the most prolific people in this scene. He plays on a lot of other records. His live band, The Wind, has a member, Colin Miller, with a solo record this year that's really good and right in this same ballpark that MJ plays on. And moving on to the next one on the list is that MJ is all over the last Waxahachie album. He plays guitar on like almost every song, and he duets with her on its best song, Right Back to It. And Waxahachie is also very much part of all of what we're talking about. And then we have Flory, who are from Vermont, and they're on Dear Life Records, which is the label that MJ Lenderman was on before he went to Anti Records. And then Greg Freeman, whose upcoming album Burn Over is like one of my most anticipated albums of this year. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about that one once it comes out. And then Ryan Davis and the Roadhouse Band, which is the current project of Ryan Davis, who before this sang in a band called State Champion. Ryan's been compared a lot to David Berman from Purple Mountains and Silver Jews. And actually, before David sadly passed, he expressed his fandom for Ryan, calling him the best lyricist who's not a rapper going. That was in 2018 when Ryan's previous band, State Champion, released their final album. Rap Boys, who I mentioned earlier, have coined the term post-country. They're on the list. Julia Steiner, their singer, also sort of put into really good words in a 2019 interview. She said post-country is basically indie music that's influenced by alt-country rather than alt-country in and of itself. And I think that's a really good, succinct way to describe a lot of what we're talking about. Fust, who are also on Dear Life Records and also from North Carolina and kind of intertwined with the Wednesday Lenderman scene. They're on this list. They're awesome. Lily Seabird, who is from Vermont and works with Greg Freeman a lot. She and Greg like playing each other's records, playing each other's bands. I feel like there's like a Vermont and a North Carolina kind of scene that are like, those are like the two hubs, I think. You got like Lily Seabird, Flory, Greg Freeman from Vermont, Wednesday, MJ Lenderman, Fust from North Carolina, Colin Miller, and then Brown Horse, who are the only band on this list actually not from America. They're from the UK, and you know, I think that they do it like they're one of my favorite bands doing this music right now. And I know that they've gotten a lot of acclaim in the UK. I haven't heard as much about them from American press. I don't know that they've toured here yet. So I do hope that like the US indie country fans find Brown Horse, because I think their new record, All the Right Weaknesses, is just one of the best albums of this year, honestly. Like I've been obsessed with it. So that's the 10.
It's a great list. I've been revisiting these albums all week. So it's also great to just like have this excuse to get into this zone and with this context, revisit all these albums and think about my own favorites, from, you know, alt country classics to indie approved country, and kind of, it gets me all thinking and listening. So that's fun. I might see Zach Bryan this weekend too. If you want the full list, we will put the link in the notes for this show. So go check it out. Lots more context, streams, and all that.
And a few honorable mentions too, because it's, as always, it's hard to get these things down to a list of 10. But
yeah, you know who I, or more specifically, commenters on Reddit noticed was not in the honorable mentions? Alex G.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, his new album Headlights is out today. I don't think Alex G is indie country. I do think there is some country influence on his music for sure. It's actually like hard for me to describe him. Like some songs are like pretty distinctly indie folk, but then others are like this weird bedroom pop stuff. So,
right. Well, my mind always goes to Elliott Smith with Alex.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's definitely an influence for sure. But yeah, Alex G's album, it's to me, the big talking point is that it's his first for a major label. It's on RCA. And I also think it's the first indie rock major label debut in a while that actually like made me feel something when I heard about that, because I feel like indie bands on majors just sort of became like not that surprising anymore by like the 2010s, and then more recently it's like happens less, but it seems like when it does happen, it's just bands that you kind of figure are probably on majors anyway, like when Vampire Weekend finally signed to a major. But like Alex G signed to a major, it feels like when Modest Mouse signed to a major in like the late 90s, early 2000s, because it's just like, whoa, here's this like pretty weird band that like doesn't seem like majors would care. And obviously with Modest Mouse, it worked for Float On. It got them one massive hit that is still a song that people who probably don't even know that band by name can sing along to. I don't know if Alex G has his Float On yet. I think maybe it's coming, who knows? But I do think that Headlights, I think it's like, in a way, it's his good news for people who love bad news, because I think like that album did for Modest Mouse, it just sort of like, it still sounds like Alex G, but it is like hones in on the catchiest version of Alex G. So I think like if you have never listened to him before, or if you were maybe just a casual fan or maybe not even a fan, I think I could see this album being like his easiest to like, because it's just kind of like these just catchy songs. Like I think some people might miss that there's not enough of the weirder stuff, although there's still some of it. But I think it's just like the easiest to listen to album he's ever made. So it's not, I don't think it sounds like the product of major label interference, but I do think that there are subtle changes that make it feel like a major label debut, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. So that Alex G album is out now. We actually have an opaque fruit punch colored exclusive vinyl variant in the BV store, shop.brooklynvegan.com, which I got to say, there's not that many variants of this album. So actually, I think there's only like 2 colors in existence. Ours, the opaque fruit punch, may be the most limited one for what it's worth. We still have copies. Go pick that up. Meanwhile, stream it. And what else is out this week?
Well, I think before we go to albums, while we're kind of talking about countryish stuff, we should talk about Amanda Shires announced her new album, Nobody's Girl. And, Jason Isbell earlier this year put out his solo record, Foxes in the Snow, which was his divorce album about his divorce from Amanda Shires. And now this is Amanda's divorce album. She did an interview with Rolling Stone that I highly recommend reading because it provides the necessary context. But the first single is called Away It Goes, and it is just like really good and really heartbreaking. Like, I think because Amanda and Jason's relationship has been so publicized, it's like, I do think it's easy for fans to be a bit invested in it. I mean, it's like reality TV, where it's just like, who are these strangers? And why do I care about their relationship? But it's like, well, because you're watching about it for like an hour, So like there's a documentary about, I guess presented as about Jason Isbell, but so much of it is really about his and Amanda's marriage, which is now over. And so I think, knowing that story and being a little invested in it in that like reality TV sense, I guess this song it hits even harder. It's really sad. And yeah, I am looking forward to hearing between this and Jason's album, both coming out this year. It's going to be a very rewarding and also very sad year for fans of both of them.
I am also very excited for this very sad album. I love Amanda so much.
Yeah.
Also in the country sphere, by the way, Drive By Truckers are out on tour with Deer Tick right now, so go check out those dates. I know they hit New York City like next week at Pier 17 and a whole bunch of other cities.
That should be really fun. And yeah, I mean, like, Drive By Truckers, who not only are obviously an influence on all the music we were talking about, like Patterson Hood put out a solo record this year that features like Wednesday and Waxahachie. So it's like, and MJ Lenderman has performed on stage with them. So yeah, they're kind of like the Deftones thing, right? They're tapped into how influential they are now. So that's cool to see. So I think it'll be a great show.
What else is out this week?
Yeah, other albums out. In addition to Alex G, Fourth Wanderers are back with their first album in 7 years. It's called The Longer This Goes On. They're from Montclair, New Jersey. They're like this indie. They kind of started out in like an indie meets emo thing, and over time, less emo, more dream pop and grunge influences kind of seeped in. And they got like kind of big and signed to Sub Pop for their 2018 self-titled sophomore album, and then they just canceled the tour in support of it, and that was it. Like they were just gone. So apparently, like the story is like the pressures of being a rising band, which are very real. Like we kind of hear the story more and more lately, is like bands just kind of like want to step away from that. And then after having been on hiatus for a bit, they're like, we didn't really like the pressures that come along with being a rising band, but we do like writing songs. So they just kind of like wrote this record on their own terms and no expectations. They said they might not even tour. So yeah, it's really good. I'm glad it's here. It's like, they're not trying to get big anymore, or whatever. They're not trying to like play the game, have a career, but just making great music. Lord Huron is back with the Cosmic Selector Volume 1. It's really good. If you like Lord Huron's 2018 album, Vide Noir, which is like the more dark psychedelic rock version of Lord Huron, it's my favorite record of theirs. This one's cut from that cloth. So really cool. Shrapnel, it's the rap duo of Premrock and Curly Castro. And Premrock already has a great record out this year, solo album, and Shrapnel are releasing 3 albums this year, each with a different producer. And basically, like when they went on tour last, they met different producers in different regions, and each one is with someone they met. And Raffi produced this album. He's from Detroit. He's in Danny Brown's Bruiser Brigade crew. Album's called Lincoln Continental Breakfast. Really cool. And also, the DJ Haram has just released her debut full-length album, Beside Myself. DJ Haram's been like a staple of the New York, New Jersey club scene for like a decade. If you're a rap fan, you probably know her beats from Arm& Hammer songs. She's one half of 700 Bliss with More Mother. Arm & Hammer and More Mother are both on this album. It's just a really cool mix of like experimental electronic music, underground rap. There's some Middle Eastern music in there. DJ Haram is Syrian, and yeah, it's really, really cool. Those 5 albums I review in notable releases on BrooklynVegan.com. Couple honorable mentions, shout outs. Laura Jane Grace of Against Me, who we always love, has a new album called Adventure Club under the name Laura Jane Grace and the Trauma Tropes. You're talking about Wu-Tang Clan earlier. Well, right in the middle of this tour, Raekwon releases his new solo album, The Emperor's New Clothes. For more, over in Indie Basement, Bill reviews the new album from Jonathan Richman, Only Frozen Sky Anyway, which reunites him with his former Modern Lovers bandmate Jerry Harrison, who is also in the Talking Heads. Jerry produced it. Bill also reviews the new albums from Billy Martin. I'm going to butcher this, but Havard Volden, who is one half of Lost Girls with Jenny Haval, and the new compilation, All the Young Droids, Junk Shop Synth Pop 1978 to 1985, which is a compilation curated by former Lush bassist Philip King.
Nice. And what about new songs?
Yeah. We were kind of talking about Deftones as like this heavy band who's, you know, really influential and still doing it and still doing stuff that people love. And I mean, Nine Inch Nails are also that. And they are doing the score for the new movie Tron Ares, and the soundtrack's new single is out, As Alive as You Need Me to Be. And it's basically, it's kind of similar to that Deftones thing. It's classic Nine Inch Nails, but it also sounds really modern. It's like a great industrial banger. It's a real single. It's not just like soundtrack score stuff. So that's cool. Blood Orange has been everywhere lately. He was at Lord's album release thing in Washington Square Park. He has been with Turnstile on stage on their new album, and he finally announced his new album, Essex Honey, which features both Lord and Turnstile's Brendan Yates, as well as Caroline Polachek, and there's a sample of the Durruti column, which is listed as a feature, and a bunch of other guests on there. Just announced this week, 2 songs are out now, including one that features both Caroline Polachek and Lord, as well as Mustafa. Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin announced his new solo album, Saving Grace. The first single is a cover of Lowe's Everybody's Song. We mentioned Drain, we mentioned Biohazard. Pool Kids' second single from their upcoming Epitaph debut is out. It's called Leona Street. It's really good. They are gutting a Body of Water, announced a new album called Lotto with a new single called Trainers. Sudan Archives announced a new album called The BPM with 2 new songs. So yeah, a lot of good stuff out this week. What else happened this week, Dave?
Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime show and Doshi's Grammys performance are both up for Emmys, along with Kamasi Washington's theme song for Adult Swim's Lazarus, Hamilton from the Walkman's theme song for the John Hamm starring Your Friends and Neighbors show. It's on Apple TV, and Questlove for his work on the SNL 50 specials and his Sly Stone documentary. Questlove, seriously everywhere. Last night I was watching that Yacht Rock documentary on HBO, and like Questlove is on the screen while the Wu-Tang show was happening at Madison Square Garden, which somebody was texting me. Questlove was like streaming live on Instagram. Anyway, My Chemical Romance's The Black Parade tour started, and the footage we've seen so far looks as crazy as we'd expect. Sound and Fury happened. We didn't really talk about that, but it had some special moments, as always, including a surprise partial 1-song Carry On reunion, a 5-song Terror set, both in the middle of God's Hates set. Knocked Loose brought out guests, including Kat Moss from Scowl, who also played the fest, and George Clark from Deaf Heaven, who they also brought out at Outbreak Fest. Friend Armisen has made an album of 100 sound effects. Jane's Addiction members are a mess. Jane's members who are not Perry Farrell are suing Perry. He, in turn, is suing them back. All has to do with that meltdown on stage, which actually happened at Pier 17 in New York City not that long ago. Pier 17 being the same venue that Drive-By Truckers and Deer Tick are about to hit on the tour, as mentioned, that is ongoing now. As we said last week, also, Dinosaur Jr. tour is underway now with Snail Mail. I may actually hit that up tonight. On that note, we'll talk to you next week.
See ya. Thanks so much for tuning into BV Weekly. If you like what you heard, like the episode, subscribe, give us a good rating, tell your friend about us. All those little things go a really long way. We really appreciate it. Dave and I will be back every Friday morning with updates on news, albums, songs, and more. And thanks so much to Joe D'Agostino from Cymbal Z Guitars and Empty Country for the great theme song, our co-producer Kevin Duffel, our mix engineer Nick Gray. See you next week.